Welcome. I'm the Deadwood Jedi. I'm super excited. Today we have a I think one of the smartest people in Raid right now. Someone who has brought a lot to the community. If you follow Reddit, if you have followed my calculator, you probably already know him. I am talking about the most illustrious Napoleon Camembert is here today. He's the first person to actually publish a working, complete, and accurate speed calculator for Clan Boss. He's been generous with his time and helped me perfect the one that I have on my website. And with him and a couple others, we've worked together to do things like create that white whale comp, that 2-1 comp. Wouldn't have been done without Napoleon there. Just a brilliant person and theorist for Raid. I'm super happy to have him here. Napoleon, how are you? Thank you for coming
Good.
on.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for hosting me and temporarily stealing my account.
Yeah, so the idea today is we're going to Napoleon's going to walk me through his latest Clan Boss team and run. And the reason why is I think he just posted the highest score since they nerfed Unkillable. I think this is the highest single run score on the Clan Boss. If it's not, it's pretty darn close. But I've never seen a comp like this. Do you want to go ahead and describe it a little so people know exactly what they're getting into here?
Yeah. Well, I guess the recent background was what you had done and Murder had illustrated and coming up with the kind of 2-to-1 turn ratio on the Clan Boss was the starting point here. So I don't have Mashaled, so that's not an option for me.
Not alone in that.
And yeah, I mean, pretty rare champion. And I thought a little bit about these other possibilities, using two boosters or one booster and a buff extender. And I had the thought that you might be able to use Seeker to set up the 2-to-1 turn ratio, because he has this speed boost, turn meter boost, every other turn. Effectively, it's a 3-turn cooldown, but he gets an extra turn.
Yeah.
So that's kind of uniquely powerful, and it seemed to work out. I came up with some speeds that would work with the 2-to-1, and they're pretty demanding, but feasible. And then Nixar, we should give Nixar a shout out. He helped out a lot in that he figured out even better speeds. I mean, these might be the kind of optimal speeds for 2-to-1 Seeker,
Right.
that were a little more accessible. Still not easy, but I've got decent gear, so I was able to put together a 2-to-1 Seeker squad with pretty good damage stats.
Yeah.
And I kind of started testing it a little bit just on Tuesday or Thursday now, and it was looking pretty good. And then did my first full Ultra Nightmare run on yesterday morning. Hit 83 million, which was a personal best for me by a full 26 million damage.
Wow.
That was pretty incredible. And then was thinking yesterday, once I got to that level, I was just going for one key, but that of course got me thinking about, okay, can I set a new damage record here? Because I think that was already pretty close to the top keys that I've heard about.
Yeah.
So I swapped in Kuatraxa and did 91.5 million this morning.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's pretty nuts, man. I recall hearing there were a couple of 80 million runs. Like obviously that AK-47 run was right around 82, 83, and then Murders was around there as well.
Yeah, 85 is the highest. I was kind of looking this morning. So Sadurm or Ninja Master, who was featured on Scratch's channel, he called it the Flash Comp, which is a really cool setup, by the way. It's not speed tuned. It's just uses the turn meter boost masteries. To my knowledge, his best run was 85. So
wow, that's pretty impressive too. Well,
yeah, I love that comp too. I think it's really cool that he's done something totally different.
Absolutely.
But I was pretty proud. I was not. This is not even what I was trying for. But yesterday I just saw that 83 million. I was like, holy shit!
Wow.
Yeah.
For those that are watching, they probably don't know. We're in a we kind of after I published the the speed calculator, I wanted to reach out to people that have been working on this stuff ahead of me, and it had kind of helped me along. And Napoleon was one of the first people I'd reached out to, and just started gathering some people that are really smart and like thinking about theory crafting in Raid. And so we have our little Illuminati group that we talk about. Nixar's a member of that, and I know the two of you really worked really hard. I was watching some of the conversation going on about really trying to get the speeds down as low as possible and make this as optimal a team as possible. But it was pretty cool because I know nobody was expecting this kind of result from it. So
No.
it's very cool. Well, why don't we go ahead and we'll jump in. You can walk me through this.
So the unfortunate thing about this, I mean, we should talk about it a little bit before you get into it.
Yeah, please.
I mean, you do manual is necessary on Santa. As far as I know, I haven't found a way to auto him. If you have Santa and you can somehow manage to fully book his A3 without lowering the cooldown on his A2, that would be great, because then they're both on 4-turn cooldowns and you can actually use him. So I mean, such a great champion, but such a bad idea.
Yeah, there's something about him where he needs to have, I believe it's an increased defense buff up in order for him to use his unkillable instead of his shield slam.
Yep. So for that reason, we got to manual this whole thing. And so just FYI, when you're not doing the block damage on Warcaster or the unkillable on Santa, you can just use their A1s, because their A1s actually do more damage than their A2s.
Okay, great.
A little bit. These are pretty squishy champions, but they'll survive at least a few turns.
Okay.
So you can start out with just A1. And so on Ultra Nightmare, the delays are no delay for Seeker,
Gotcha.
1-turn delay for Warcaster, and 2-turn delay for Santa or for Roshkard if you're replacing him. Yeah, and then the only other thing to think about on manual is really Draco. But yeah, making a decision about whether or not to use Draco's A3, because you don't need it on cooldown here, right? You're getting so many turns in that it'll come off cooldown
before I actually need to use
while
it.
you still have the debuffs on. Yeah.
Gotcha. When we start taking those multiple turns, it'll still be on the clan boss while we're still going through our turns. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
actually.
And you don't want to miss A1s if you have the opportunity with Draco, because they just do so much damage. Once the turn order settles in, he'll be first. So you want to use the A1 and then wait for the debuffs to drop off, and then you can use his A3.
That makes a lot of sense.
As long as you just don't miss the Warcaster, Santa, and Seeker abilities on cooldown,
we're pretty much good to go.
Should be good for 50 turns. Yeah.
Wow. This is such a simple setup.
It's so simple. I really wish you could auto it. I mean, I guess there's probably a slight gain from manualing Draco here.
Yeah. There's always a slight gain from manualing anyway, but when you're doing 93 million, I mean, is it really necessary?
Yeah, and you saw the times on those runs I did this morning and yesterday. It's taken a half hour, so. Absolutely.
So those of you watching right now, this run might take a few minutes here. It is it's nothing not too quick. This is nerve-wracking. This is nerve-wracking, and we have a long ways to go. Who else would you use instead of because I know we brought in Crew Traction because he just does massive amounts of damage. But could you use somebody instead of Seeker in this role, or is Seeker really the option here?
I think he's unique. I mean, I think he and Ma are our two self-contained 2-1 champions right now.
Gotcha.
So you need Nick, Warcaster, and Seeker to not get targeted, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so at first I was trying to get it on Martyr and Draco. And this might be worth telling people about. So if you're doing a setup like this, right, you got to have it not on the unkillable champs and not on Seeker. And so, if it hits the other two, it's just a loss of damage. So the problem with Draco was originally the way I had his masteries, he had that offensive mastery heal ability. And even though I already had him set up as the squishiest one, he had the lowest defense and the lowest HP. On like a counterattack or an A1, he just heal for so much because he's doing almost 250,000 damage, that he'd have then high health, and the clan boss would then target Warcaster or Seeker.
Sure.
And I had a couple runs. My first two runs ended because of that.
So he has to be like the lowest health and stay the lowest health, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Kutraxa and Draco here are the only two that don't have that mastery that heals when you're low HP.
That's interesting.
Um,
Those masteries that you don't think about at all can really mess up your run in a way that you don't expect.
yeah, absolutely, and especially when it comes to stun targeting. I mean,
Especially.
there's the aspect where maybe you're not going to think of how it affects it, but also we just don't even understand stun targeting fully. So uh, sometimes something just happens and you change a mastery,
Yep.
and then it's okay.
I was wondering, like, I know this is something I had mentioned just because I have the champion and I like them a lot. But what about bringing in, like, say, like a Septimus or something for Kutraxa? You don't think that would... Is Kutraxa's a, like, 4-hit A1 just too strong?
I don't know. I mean, I think, she obviously improved on Martyr. That wasn't completely obvious to me initially that giving up on the counterattacks is worth it.
Oh, yeah, you had Martyr
Uh,
in this setup originally.
yeah, Martyr instead of Kutraxa was my first version, yesterday's version. And I
Interesting.
thought, hey, I should try to push this, And
Yeah,
yeah, and it definitely worked. And it kind of makes sense how it works. Once you're just doing more regular attacks, the counterattacks are kind of a lower proportion of your damage.
right.
And so, replacing Martyr with just a higher damage champion, especially, given this is a setup where I have attack up coming from Seeker.
Which is
Um,
really big, too. I hadn't really thought about that aspect of what Seeker brings, but that's
yeah,
really
it's a
helpful
huge,
for a champion like Draco and Kutraxa.
yeah, it's totally huge. And it makes him a really interesting 2-1 enabler, right? Like it's not just that he can enable it; he also brings something else, which is kind of like Ma. And
Yeah,
Ma doesn't just enable the 2-1, and it's also healing.
right.
So, but in this sort of setup, if you're using attack-based champions, I mean, Seeker's clearly better. And you don't need the leech for healing here, and in fact, it would be a bad thing because it would take a debuff slot. So,
Mm, that's
so I
interesting.
see them as being like two, they're just different, but they're the two champions we have right now that can do this.
No, that
Uh,
makes a lot of sense. I mean, when we discovered that about Mashal, the fact that not only was he using, not only would he speed himself up, but that he would take another turn right away, so that that ability would come back so quickly. Um, like figuring that out was just huge for breaking that whole speed composition open. And I
yep.
can't, Seeker's kind of that same way. I never would have thought of it. Never would have thought
Yeah.
of it in my life. Like that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know if anybody feels this way about this type of thing, but I find it so satisfying watching these champions just kind of go through this routine over and over and over and just like almost like this unstoppable force in a way. If you were to try to improve what you have here, which I mean obviously is pretty remarkable already, what would be the places that you'd be looking for improvement on?
Okay, well, the easiest thing is replacing Warcaster, right? And in no sense do I think that he is the optimal champion to use in that slot. You could replace him with Santa or Roshkard,
Right.
and either one is just obviously better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's one interesting question about there about Santa versus Roshkard and who's better.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I can't. And I can't answer that very confidently because I don't have Roshkard. Otherwise, you'd see him on the screen right now.
Right.
Um, but so double Santa would be super interesting just because of the defense mastery counterattacks,
Mm.
right? And then I think you could feel like really good about this sort of strategy where I got rid of Martyr, and I'd be quite confident that it would be correct to not use a counterattack champion here because you'd have 50%. Well, not for the first few turns, but eventually, once you're losing enough health, you'd have a 50% chance to counterattack on each AoE, anyways. Um,
Right.
and Santa enables that because it's just unkillable. So you can still lose health, and Santa's healing you, so you get above the 25% health that you need to trigger those defense mastery counterattacks.
That's a really interesting part of it I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, so double Santa would be really good for that, and of course a pain on manual. Uh, Double Rosh card would be great for auto. Definitely the best version of this for auto, at least in terms of the two unkillable champions you're using.
Right.
And Rosh card's going to do a ton of damage with the attack up buff from Seeker. Right? I think his raw damage is probably better than Santa when he has attack up, at least. I don't know that it's better without that, but
yeah, the limited amounts I've seen of Tower, he does good damage, but it's not that different from what Santa brings anyhow. Yeah.
So the interesting question would be whether double Santa or double Rosh is optimal, but definitely Warcaster is not optimal.
Gotcha.
And it's also worth maybe noting for your audience that you can only use one Warcaster. You can't use double Warcaster because he only has the one turn block damage. So
he has to go last in the order in order for that to work. Yeah.
Yeah, and only one Warcaster can be last. So yeah.
So let me ask you. I was actually kind of curious because if people don't know, basically what happened was back in, I think it was January, you had put together your speed calculator and released that out on Reddit to well-deserved and wide acclaim because it was extremely smart, and you were doing things like incorporating the true speed from speed sets and things that like I had missed, and like you had gotten the most impressive, I think, is you had gotten the turn meter correct on that, which was not something that had been accurately deduced before, at least to my knowledge. And like it seemed to be very popular, and I had been working on mine at the time, and I ended up having to, like, after my testing, I realized that you had those numbers right, extremely right, and I had to end up stealing those in order to make my calculator work. I was wondering, like, how did you feel when I put my website out there? Because I can tell you, when you put your calculator out there, I had a mini panic attack in my house. I was like, oh my God, all this work is going to be for nothing. This gentleman did what I did and did it better. What's going down?
I did not have a panic attack when you put your calculator out there. My first Reddit post on Raid, where I was kind of talking about fast load speed tuning, but it was before I had the spreadsheet. I had just been doing some of my own simulations, like not in Excel, to try to, I had my own kind of working model of the turn radius mechanics.
Right.
But it wasn't necessarily something I was planning on kind of putting out there. And then I found out about Kuroshio's Shioizos.
Yes, I can't say it either.
I found out about his spreadsheet because he linked to it in the comments on that first post, and I looked at it, and then I basically thought, hey, this is good, but it wasn't exactly the model of turn meter mechanics that I thought was correct. And so I kind of knew that his wasn't right based on some testing.
Right. And
so I just kind of published an updated version of his spreadsheet with the mechanics, turn meter mechanics that I thought were more likely to be correct. And then I posted that with my second Reddit post, where I talked a bit more about fast low speed tuning possibilities. And that's, I think, the one that you linked on your website.
Yeah, it's a great post. If anybody hasn't read it, it is really, really smart, and it helps you understand a lot more about how turn meter works, but also like how to better tune your team using that, which is the important part, really.
Yeah, and so even, I didn't quite have the right model of turn meter at that point. I didn't understand true speed at that second Reddit post, and I think the number of speed units I was using for the turn meter was 1440.
Right. That's what I've been using at that point too, interestingly enough.
Yeah, and that seemed to be consistent with what I had seen at that point. Um, and I think I had narrowed it down to something like 1425 to 1440. Um, and then the kind of refinements came just from people that were really paying attention to their runs and using the spreadsheet, kind of giving me feedback and kind of managed to narrow it down. And so Cincelena was had some really careful observations. I remember he messaged me over Reddit, and the first couple of times I'm like, who is this guy? Because I did get a lot of messages from people that were just like, it didn't work.
Oh,
and I'm like, okay, like,
I yeah.
So you go through the thing, like, okay, check for turn meter boost masteries,
right?
Like.
That's my daily routine now. Is that
most of those messages are like that. His weren't. It turned out he was really paying attention, and he managed to narrow it down to like 1428 to 1431.
Wow.
And so we just put it in that range. I don't know. I think I updated it to like 1430. And I was like, that's a weird number.
Just kind of
for
a
while, and then I don't know, one day I just kind of realized, wait, like 100 divided by 0.07 is 1429 point something, or 1428 point something.
Yeah.
And I remembered having watched Plarium's video on the turn meter mechanics, and they said, hey, it's like you get a percentage equal to 0.075 times your champion's speed. And I was like, well, that would actually be exactly consistent with the actual number being 0.07, not 0.075, as they suggest in the video. And they said in the video 0.075 wasn't the real number.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, well, that has to be it.
Yep.
And so that was the process there.
That makes a lot of sense. I kept thinking to myself when I was trying to figure it out, I'm like, this has to be a round number. It has to be something that makes sense to a human being, because it's human beings making this game.
Exactly. Like somebody had to program this.
No one's just picking 4 random digits and putting them in a line. Like,
no.
Yeah.
And that's why I was kind of like, well, 1440 seemed like maybe a number that somebody would have typed into a program. But then I just couldn't understand why 1429 or 1430 would be, what anybody would have thought of, until I realized that, the 100 divided by 0.07.
I got so deep into it, I'd start thinking like, well, you know what? Maybe 1429 makes sense. They want something that's really obscure. That's what they're going for here. It
could be. Yeah, it could be. And then the true speed thing was kind of similar when it was a clan meet at the time. He's since quit the game. He goes by Ikio. He was pretty engaged with using this, and he created some pretty creative fast slow setups. As far as I know, I don't know if he was the first, but he was the first person I know of that figured out how to do like an unkillable that worked on every affinity using Dewey's. Anyway, so he was using this to build like a lot of rush card skull crusher setups and that sort of thing. And he noticed that like a 253 rush card that was working on one account, like the same setup didn't work on another account. And they both
that's interesting.
253. And this was the beginning of his true speed. He was just like, and I went through the same thing with them. I'm like, can you show me screenshots? Like, show me your masteries. Like, no, he was paying attention, and he had identified a case where like 2 rush cards that should have the same speed were behaving differently. They had the same displayed speed.
Right.
And so we just chatted about it. We're like, what is going on here? Well, and then we're like, okay, well, there has to be decimal speeds. And when we calculated what their speeds would have been, like based on the substats they had and the masteries and speed sets.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, one of them is actually
slower than the other
232.8, and one of them would actually be 233.4. And then we put those numbers into the simulator, and indeed,
it worked out.
They differently in the simulator, and they corresponded to what we were seeing in game.
Yeah, because people don't know, we were talking about just the true speed, and you had mentioned that there's an outlier possibility that a champion with a faster displayed speed could actually go slower than a different champion, and
Yeah.
like literally because of that conversation, I went and tested that, and I think I did a video.
Yeah, you did it right then and there.
Yeah,
That was like our first time chatting in Discord. Yeah.
yeah, I did a video
Um,
on it, and like it was mind-boggling. Where I had a champion going, displayed speed was 178, and the other one displayed speed was 177, and the 177 went first. It was just kind of like, this has to be the most, it's
yeah,
in
yeah.
one respect it's a very asinine thing. It's illogical, doesn't make sense. But in the other, once you understand like the mechanics of why that's happening and the decisions that go into it, it did make a lot of sense. It was just, you know,
Well,
well, it made
it's explainable.
fair enough. It's explainable, I suppose.
Maybe not the way I would have programmed the game, but yeah. I would love to have CP and Chris. Yeah.
Boy, Krisk is my number one wish list champion. Is Krisk by far.
Me too.
It just brings so many different things to the game.
CP's up there.
Yeah, for sure.
Chris is, yeah. I mean, I would mind a Rosh guard at this point just so I can auto some of these cool unkillable stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Like what I would love, because I just think they're cool, would be Sify or Krisk. However, I would be extremely happy and grateful if I could get a decent poisoner like Draco or Venus. That would just make my clan boss team so much better, because unfortunately I can't use either one of them right now. It's very like I don't have somebody that brings multiple things to the table, and it's just,
Yeah, I mean, those two are pretty game changing. They're probably the most game changing for clan boss.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, when you bring all the debuffs together, I mean, I don't know. I slept on Septimus for a long time, and I didn't realize how strong he is. But my Septimus now routinely does 250, 300k on the clan boss with his big hit, and he has like no attack values in him at all. It's all like all defense, all stalwart gear. But he keeps my debuffs up almost the entire fight. Which I didn't think would be possible. And, I got freaking Steel Skull putting up poison, so you want to talk about a low chance of landing debuffs.
Yeah. Rosh card users don't have to worry about this. This is
Don't be angry. It's okay.
I am grateful for Santa. He is really good.
Makes you feel better. I don't have Santa. I don't have Rosh card. I don't have...
Right.
Oh, wait. I don't have any of these champions. I don't have a single one of them.
You don't have a Seeker?
No, he's like honestly, I think he's the only epic I don't have at this point. That's not Void.
Yeah.
Like, I think I have all the Void ones. I don't have Seeker, and I don't have Madame Sarah. So those are the two champions I don't have right now that are epics.
Yeah, those are pretty good.
I know.
Sarah's well, now with Seeker, we know that Seeker's at SS tier clan boss too, but he wasn't on Tuesday, so
that's true. It's amazing what the day will change.
Yeah.
That's really funny. SS tier now. God damn it. So bitter. That's great.
Yeah, I'm missing a few. I think the only epics I'm missing are also good ones. I don't have Royal Guard.
What?
Steel Skull, or what's the other good one I don't have?
Well, you don't need Steel Skull because you have Draco. It's not.
Yeah.
It's completely unnecessary for your account. He's good, but I mean.
So
I'm bitter because I haven't had for the
long. Oh, I don't have Flesh Terror. That's an interesting. He's not necessarily good, but interesting kit.
Who is?
Flesh Terror, the extender.
Oh yeah, he's interesting. I have a couple of them. I actually want to level them up so I can start playing around with that. Skinwalkers. I feel like that entire faction is underutilized, and I can't tell whether the champions are really that bad or much like what we've been discovering with new champions throughout. Like they're just not utilized in the proper way, or misrepresented, I suppose.
Also, I was talking to Belruden about what you can do with Flesh Terror in 4-3 setups, and it seems like the interesting things. But then he was testing his damage multiplier, and it seems like preposterously low.
Wow.
like common champion low.
Oh my god, that's pretty bad.
Well, I think the main source of RNG for most people, and I think a lot of people don't realize it if they just like auto, but the attack down. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have like a completely reliable attack down, and frankly, most of them aren't.
Yeah,
Um, Even Alton, once in a while
it'll
can let it
drop.
fall off.
No,
Uh,
100%. That and the
and
crits.
yeah, the early crits sometimes. Yeah, that's right.
But this is gonna be like I don't know, the community's gonna lose their shit over this, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's I think it's a pretty big breakthrough. I mean, I was not expecting it at all. Um, I'm not just trying to like toot my own horn or anything here, but but being able to do this with a with an epic is
It's huge. It's huge. It's funny all the little things that kind of combine to make this work. I mean, honestly, the just that 2-1, the 2-1 ratio is completely changing the meta of how this game is done.
oh
That
yeah.
clan boss, it's unreal. Like, and like I don't think like I think people are just scratching the surface too. Like what that means. Like this is a huge leap forward. Combining unkillable with the 2-1 ratio is just stupid. My sincere thanks to Napoleon Camembert for taking the time out to talk to us today. This was super fun. I think we had about a 2-hour conversation, even though I tried to cut it down to just about 30 minutes so you guys could see that run. That score is the big score that he put up a day ago that we were trying to meet today, and we were just unable to. This is a tricky composition, so definitely be careful if you're trying to duplicate it. And if you are trying to see someone even best this score, pay attention to Murder Inc.'s channel. I know he was on stream today trying to overcome that number, aiming for that 100 million mark, which I think is going to be broken at some point here soon. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this. I did. I'm loving these kind of conversations with members of the community. If you did, please like and subscribe to this video. Hit that notification bell so you know when the next one comes out. I plan on doing more of these types of interviews and just letting us all get a little bit smarter by meeting some of the people that are doing a great job in this game. So, till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.